Just signed on a couple minutes early. It always takes people a little while to gather. As I'm talking to you this morning, it is we got our first real snowfall of the year here, which is it's very pretty. That's always we've had a little bit of snow here and there, but the first like couple of inches that stuck, so it's very pretty out. It's pretty shortly. Good morning. Always the first one here. um, it's very, very pretty here, and it always gives me the sort of the holiday spirit when it snows for the first time. It's really pretty, and consequently, my dog's from Puerto Rico, and she's only about 8 or 9 months old at this point, so she has never seen snow before. So she didn't. It was funny. She didn't quite know what to make of it when she went out this morning and then was prancing around in it, and it was pretty cute. It was pretty adorable. Um, this is the Shamanic Coffee Hour, and today I'm going to talk about forgiveness. This has been a popular request. Um, Last time I talked about soul loss and soul retrieval from strictly a shamanic perspective, the shamanic view of trauma. Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you here. Thank you, everyone who's joining in. So, as I said, we're talking about today. We're going to talk about forgiveness and sort of what. Let's talk about what it is. I think there are some misconceptions about what forgiveness is and why we're interested in forgiveness from a spiritual perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a particularly mental health perspective, and hopefully I'll outline some ways to you know, get going on the pathways to forgiveness. That's the title of this talk this morning anyway. So hopefully, give some practical advice along the way. Anyway, so um let's start by talking about what I mean by forgiveness, because I think there's this idea that and it can mean this, but we'll talk about it from a practical perspective. But forgiveness means to let someone off the hook who has transgressed against you, right? Um, and there's forgiveness, and there's forgetfulness, and there is, dangerously doing the same things over and over again, or letting people back into your life who were not good for you. And I had somebody contact me recently. I mean, this is a pretty common thing, but they're talking about thinking about cutting off family members, right, from my life because there was a bunch of stuff happened and nobody's remorseful about it, and nobody really is taking accountability, and it's bad for my mental health. And I can't tell, I told this person, like, I can't tell you what to do, but and her qualm about it, I guess, was that, is it moral to cut off members of your family? Right? And I'm like, well, I don't make moral distinctions. We're taught in our culture that you have to maintain these relationships with a family or whatever, or even though it may be really unhealthy for us. And, you know, um, Vishen Lakiani of Mind Valley. I don't know if you know the company Mind Valley, but they produce a lot of sort of self improvement and spiritual courses and products and things. He calls those brules, BRULES, which stands for BS or bullshit rules. Pardon my French. Bullshit rules, right? They're just rules that culture has given us, our upbringing has given us, our education has given us, that are actually hindering us in our life, right? The shoulds. Hey, awesome, awesome. I am so happy that that is the case for you. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. But we have these rules and we feel like, and there can, there certainly can be very real consequences to cutting people off in your life, right? You don't have a connection with that person anymore. And um, you lose some support sometimes because people who can be awful to us or, whatever, can also sometimes be supportive. And so we can create this dependent relationship as well. So all kinds of things can kind of happen there. Um, but I don't make moral judgments about that because I think frequently morality is used to punish people for not behaving the way we want them to behave, whether that's right for them or not, right? There's a lot of morality around things like, money and sex and all of these things that, simple ethics is much more important, right? Simple ethics, don't hurt other people, right? Don't do things that are harmful. When you weigh, you can weigh like do the least harm. That's it. Simple ethics. That's the guideline that you need. And the golden rule, which you can argue is spiritual, religious or not, because it was, spoken by Jesus in the Bible, but also spoken by Buddha about 500 years before. So there's a common thread here. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a great rule. Why is it a golden rule? Because does it make us, because it just creates a better world that we live in. And people forget that. People forget that golden rule, particularly when it comes to, there's certain sectors of the society where like, oh, these, foreigners are coming into our land and taking all our things and blah, blah, blah. Well, how would you want to be treated if that were you, if you were in the same situation? Um, Anyway, I'm not going to go down and talk about um, politics at all. But so I'm going to talk today about forgiveness, and so there's a bunch of ideas that sort of can hinder us in our forgiveness, right? One is that forgiving someone means letting them back in your life or allowing them to hurt you again, and that's not the case. Does not have to mean that. The other thing is that to forgive the idea is to forgive somebody, they have to be apologetic. They have to be penitent. They have to ask for forgiveness. And that's not true either. And the third sort of big lie about forgiveness is that forgiveness is about the other person. It's not. It's about you. When you forgive, you are reaping the emotional benefits to that. The opposite of forgiveness is attachment to negative feelings, memories, and beliefs about somebody else, right? So forgiveness is about letting go of, I call it letting go of the emotional charge that we carry around when we think about other people and how they may have transgressed against us. And almost, every spiritual system I can think of teaches forgiveness as part of its pathway because it's important. Why is it important? Well, if I, you know, if I have been traumatized by somebody or, not even traumatized, somebody has just transgressed against me in some way, I'm angry at them. I'm carrying around that anger, right? We know that is unhealthy. It's unhealthy for the mind, it's unhealthy for the body, and it is unhealthy for the spirit. And so forgiving is about letting go of the attachment to that emotional charge. Now, I think another another misconception about forgiveness is I make a decision, I'm going to forgive my father for being abusive when I was a child. Make that decision. That means I have no more feelings about that. No, forgiveness is a process. It takes time, it takes healing, right? It's not just a decision. Forgiveness, yes, the word forgiveness is a noun, but forgiveness is a process. It's a process noun, right? Like growth. Growth is a thing but it happens over time. It's a process, right? I'm trying to grow basil indoors right now. Process is not going as well as I would like. Um, so forgiveness is a process, and it can take time. It can take a lot of time after we decide that we are important enough to forgive these other people. And again, so the survival part of us, the survival mechanisms that we have in our body mind tell us that we have to hang on to this emotion to feel safe, to protect ourselves. We have to put this armor on to protect ourselves. And that's a lie, right? I don't have to be afraid of cars to not step out into the road when cars are coming, right? I have a mind. I can discriminate and say this isn't safe. I don't have to hold on to emotional content to keep myself safe from something that is, you know, I can determine as harmful or harmful to myself. The other part of it is when we're holding on to these emotions that we have, they supersede our thinking. They supersede our discretion. We've all known the person that got into the wrong relationship. We've all been in the wrong relationship. I know I have, right? Because my emotion, like even though there were alarm bells going off, I I will not name names, but somebody many years ago when I was a much younger man, somebody I dated twice, and I was like, wait, there was a reason I broke up with this person in the first place. Why would I go out with her again? Like, oh, because my emotion, like, I remembered all the good emotions I had, and I remember, the positive feelings, and I forgot about all this. I was clinging to the hope of the good feelings again, and didn't didn't last very long. But the same thing is true. Like if we're holding on to these negative emotions, we can overreact to things. So in our brain, we have this alarm part of our brain called the amygdala, and it was designed to keep us alive and to keep us safe, to say, oh, we went down to the watering hole and my friend got eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So the amygdala should go off when I encounter stimulus that reminds me of the saber-toothed tiger, but I shouldn't be afraid of getting water from the watering hole, right? Because I need that to survive. So sometimes those feelings can intervene, can step into, can interfere with us living our lives, from getting into that relationship that might be good for us, you know, when we overgeneralize things. And so when we decide I am important enough to let go of the emotional charge around this person, um, that's when we can start to begin to heal. So forgiveness in this respect is about letting go, healing my own wounds and letting go of the emotions around that. And is it challenging? Absolutely. You know, there are still people in my life who, caused me harm at some point that I have emotional charge around it, and I will continue to work on. Is it less emotional charge than I had years ago? Yeah, because I've been working on it. Um, how do we know when we fully forgive? I think it's so easy for us to not grasp because, yeah, I mean, I don't know that the goal needs to be fully forgiving, right? To be meaning like zero emotional charge around this person. Um, I think again, it's a process that happens in stages. So you can keep doing your work until your work to forgive until it stops being an issue for you. And if you find a little more stuff coming up, you work on that as time goes on. I think we, particularly in this culture, particularly in the sort of Western American, European culture, we're very goal oriented, right? I want to get to the third level of enlightenment, in the next 2 years, kind of thing. Um, Instead of focusing on the process or the journey being the actual goal, like going through this process being the thing that helps us grow. So instead of worrying about, well, have I fully forgived? I don't tend to think about it that way. I'm like, okay, well, I can think about these people and not get upset anymore. Is that good enough? Well, it is for now. And something comes up that reminds me of something somebody did that hurt me at one point, and I have an emotional reaction to it. Okay, well, that indicates to me that there's something unhealed in me, so I'm going to go work on that. I'm going to go work on healing that, which is forgiveness is a huge part of that. I would say anytime we're triggered, triggers are sort of like breadcrumbs. Somebody described them to me once as breadcrumbs from our teacher, right? Um, yeah, yeah. So shifting how so I almost hate to use this word because when it like there were a few years ago, this word was like way overused, but or this phrase, like it's a paradigm shift when you start to look at things in a different way, and it changes how you actually relate to yourself, relate to the world, relate to spirit, relate to spirituality, right? So, um, so yeah, we can shift our mindset and say, I'm just, and I'll talk about that a little bit too, because I want to give some sort of practical tips to help people in their journey of forgiveness. Um, One of the ways that can begin to forgive is to shift the way that we're looking at other people. Now, we are many layered beings. As humans, we have a body and a body mind. I kind of lump those things in together. They're not easily separated. Body and mind are not easily separated, but there are parts of the mind that are, um, you know, there are many different parts of the mind, as there are many different parts of the body. So, a paradigm shift or a shift in our view or a shift in the way we're looking at things, that's a mental aspect of forgiveness. Now, there may also be stuff stored in our physicality or stored in other layers, other sort of deeper spiritual layers, more subtle spiritual layers, like the energy body. So we may have held on to uh, angry energy or something like that in our energy body, and one of the reasons spiritually to work on this is if we're holding on, like you when we're holding on to stuff, it can clog up the works, can clog up the pipes of the energy body and prevent us from really stepping into our spiritual abilities, stepping into our own spiritual wisdom. All of these things, it can block us from our spiritual development. So it's important to approach it from that perspective as well. Um, Much judgment arises from the hypothetical, yes, that people should be different, but if they could be different, they would. Absolutely. Yeah. So, a good example of that, I think, is if you think about people in times and places where being gay was illegal, could get you killed or thrown in jail, and yet people were still gay, people still had these feelings, people were just that way. And even though the folks who were saying you shouldn't be this way, it's amoral, it's hurting our society, whatever, um I have friends, friends that I've spoken to saying, look, growing up in a time where I grew up, um saying things like, if I could have been different, I would. And gosh, I tried, right? I really tried. Pay attention to what we call linguistically, they're called modal operators, right? Modal operators are things like should, have to, need to, must. Should is a big one, though. I've heard spiritual teachers say, "Stop shitting on yourself," right? Trying to be a little funny, but I should do this. I should not do that. I should or shouldn't. Um, why? Where does that rule come from? So pay attention to that. Anytime you are shoulding yourself or somebody else, why? According to who? Like, question that. When shoulds come up, question them. I should go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. Does my body want to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night? Or is that some rule? Or is there some reason I have to get up and, go to work in the morning, or I have to get up and do a live video stream in the morning? Um, maybe there is. Maybe there's a good reason. But there's a difference between I should do something and I want to, or that sort of thing. Should is an obligation, and we often use it to short circuit logic, right? There's nothing wrong, as a spiritual person, I operate a lot with intuition, but there's nothing wrong with being logical and thinking things through. There's nothing wrong with saying, I should, if I say I should do something, analyze where that should comes from. It's usually an indication of some rule that someone else has put upon us that maybe we've internalized. And that's not a great thing. So let's talk about, so we've talked a little bit about what forgiveness is and why you might want to make forgiveness part of your spiritual practice. Let me talk about a few of the hows. So let's talk about how we can begin this journey of forgiveness. And there are lots and lots of different sort of techniques out there, and I couldn't outline all of them even if I wanted to, just even if I knew all of them. There just wouldn't be time for that. But I'll give you a few pointers to begin. And people who are really interested um, in the journey of forgiveness, there are books, there are I'm sure tons of YouTube videos and articles on the web and all kinds of stuff. There are all kinds of resources if this is something you're interested in pursuing further, which I recommend for everybody. Everybody can benefit from this. So one of the things I touched on a little bit is sort of changing the paradigm, changing the way that we look at the people in our lives that have transgressed or harmed us, right? The people that we're holding on to emotional feelings about. Um, and so looking at them from a different perspective can sometimes help loosen up, right? Because in our brain we have this concept of the it's not the person, we have a model of this person in our brain. So we'll say, this person, did some harm to me. I have a lot of things like tied up in their identity in my brain as who they are, what I feel they should have done, what they did anyway, how they harmed me, a bunch of stuff, a bunch of stories about them. So it's this complex cluster of belief and emotion and memory and all kinds of stuff. And we can loosen that up. I think of it like untying a ball, like a really balled up knot of yarn, right? If you ever had to help your grandmother, with her yarn or whatever, or your own yarn. Um, I'm not a big like knitting or anything like that. My partner is a fiber artist and really fantastic. And uh, knows everything there is to know about yarn and fiber and stuff like that. Anyway, so it's like untying this big ball of stuff. And so we begin by loosening that up. We begin by changing, by viewing things in different perspectives. And this is a good exercise for almost anything, not just forgiveness. The ability to shift our perspective makes us more flexible, right? The ability to take on different beliefs, even if that is temporary, right? Even if they conflict, even we can hold on to things for a short period of time, even if they conflict with our currently held beliefs. So, um, so somebody's upset that they email me and haven't heard back, and I apologize for that. It's happened sometimes that I miss emails or they wind up for whatever reason in a spam folder or something. So I apologize if I've not gotten back to somebody who's emailed me apparently several times. So I'm not sure how I missed that. I do try to respond. To people, and sometimes I'm not great at it. So anyway, we will move on from there. So how do we start to shift our thinking about the people that we perceive as having transgressed? Well, first of all, um, one of the ways is we can see them in a very different light. So depending upon your spiritual belief system, we are all part of the same we are all part of the same consciousness. Maybe you believe in, God, or you're animistic, or whatever. But the truth is there are um, lots of different methods of viewing, or lots of different ways of viewing how this person is, right? Our limited perspective is a limited perspective, even if we know this person really intimately well, right? um so we are all part of one consciousness, and one thing that has worked really well for me is to hold other people in the light. And again, this can be temporary, right? It just starts the process of forgiveness. Hold this person in the light that you are aspects of the same being. You are part of the same consciousness. In fact, a really powerful spiritual process is when you encounter people in the world, whether you're thinking about them or seeing them face to face, or, just running into them in the street, is looking at them and holding the thought, you are me, I am you. We're the same being, right? And you might think, well, I would never hurt myself like this person hurt me, or I would never cause these problems. And that's fine. And that's true. Your ego would not probably do the same things that this person would do. But in your separate egos, that's for sure. But this is an as this, we can start to think of these people as aspects of ourselves. And the way I like to think about it is, these are teachers. These are our teachers, these people who have harmed us. Not It wasn't their intention to teach us. They might have had good intentions, they might have had really bad intentions towards us, but they're a teacher. They're teaching us about how we want to be treated and how we don't want to be treated. They're teaching us, they're giving us opportunities to forgive. They're giving us opportunities to grow. So this is a paradigm shift to hold a person in that light. I'm not saying um you can even get to the place of being grateful for the person who hurt you. I know it's hard to get. I do know it's very hard to get there. Personally know how hard it is to get there. Um, but hold that thought, hold that paradigm, and realize that we can create some flexibility in our consciousness. And the more flexible we can be, the less the less we're holding on to that emotional spark, this person did me wrong. The healthier we become, spiritually, mentally, even physically, right? A lot of trauma, emotional stuff is held in the body or held in the body really close to the physical body. So causes some can cause some physical harm there. So one of the things that's worked for me really well is and my teacher would always say, how can you be grateful for the difficult people? How can we be grateful for the difficult people in our lives? Right. Um, so just, think about that. Ask yourself that. How can I be grateful for the people who are causing me problems? And again, your ego and parts of your unconscious mind, your wounded parts, they're going to scream and say, how could I forgive that person? They're going to cause me harm again. And they aren't, because you still have, even if you let go of the emotion, you still have discrimination. You're still a smart person. You still can make choices that you are, you know, you're not going to let that person back in your life. You're not going to let that person harm you. You don't have to have this huge negative emotional charge that's causing you harm in order to keep safe. That's, the ego is very simplistic in our survival mechanisms are old and very simplistic, right? They're old in that, you know, even worms and snakes and iguanas and stuff that don't have the prefrontal cortex that we grew, have these survival mechanisms, right? And my dog, I talked about my dog in the beginning. She's a rescue from Puerto Rico, and she was a street dog, so she was feral for the first few months of her life. And she still has fear responses to some stimulus, and I have to think about, okay, I can't approach her when she's near her food. She doesn't get aggressive, but she'll like back off her food and cower down. And she probably had to fight for her food with other dogs as a puppy. And people, at some point, people captured her and brought her up here into the cold Northeast. So, you know, so I understand. There's that conditioning in there, that old conditioning. The old parts of our brain are very, our limbic system. There are fear responses that happen that are even with people with damaged limbic systems, can still get survival responses from certain biological stimulus. So I get that. So you have that stuff. It's fine. But we don't have to clog up our emotional system or not grow or not experience the world, right? So we want to let go of this stuff as much as we can. The one, and this I think is the biggest and probably most important, most impactful, the method or technique for forgiveness is to start to look at the people who've harmed us in a different light. What if, how can I look at this person as a teacher? How can I look at, what this person did to me as, even though it was horrible at the time and I would never want to repeat it. And it's, when I think about it now, it makes me angry. What lessons, what gifts have come out of that? Right. Um, and I don't wish trauma on anybody, and I would not go through the experiences I went through as a child. But if I hadn't gone through those, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I wouldn't be helping people, talking to people, teaching people. I would never have taken up shamanism. So any spiritual development I've done, and the place that I'm in now, and the partnership I'm in now, and the fact that I'm able to be a good dad to my kids, and all of those things, in part came out of my traumatic past. So again, while I would not relive that given the choice, um, there are gifts there, right? This is not to be confused with what we call spiritual bypassing. So there's a little bit of a fine line here. Um, a little bit of a fine line that we don't want to, when things are not okay, we don't want to go, everything's fine. I'm at this, I'm a 13th level wizard or whatever, right? I'm at this spiritual level where everything is fine and I don't have to address anything in my life. And I don't have to address the people who are actively harming me right now. That's spiritual bypassing, and that's absolutely not healthy, right? Either. We want to be in this world and understand that we are also in other worlds. We want to be in this world in a way that we're standing in our own sovereignty. Um, yes. Yeah. So it's again, it's not forgiveness is not about letting people off the hook. It's not about forgetting. People say forgive and forget, but it's not about forgetting that these people are have done harm and continue doing harmful things or letting them back in our lives or anything like that. But it is about letting go. And yes, it is hard to let go. It can be hard to let go. Like I said, it's letting go, holding on to that negative emotion feels like it's keeping you safe. But that is a little bit of a lie that our emotional body tells us. Keeping you safe. I'm just keeping you safe by keeping these things in place. Um, Forgiving is not letting harmful people back in your life. I can't stress that enough. If you've cut somebody off, and letting go of the emotional charge does not mean you forget that this was a person who did you harm. And if they're not taking steps to correct their actions, um, there's no reason to assume they wouldn't do the same thing all over again. Right. So again, forgiveness is for you. It's not about them. Forgiveness is not about the other person, right? It can be, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just talking about forgiving for your own sake, not having to feel like there's an ongoing threat if something isn't an ongoing threat. In the moment, you cannot forgive in you could, I guess, but in the moment it's very hard, almost impossible to forgive. So if somebody is actively harming you now, um, you can't just go, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna let go of that emotional charge right now." You're in it. You're in it. It's after the fact. It's after you're safe, right? In that moment, yeah, your emotions are keeping you safe. But when that moment is over, those emotions are no longer necessary to keep you safe. And hopefully you've learned enough from the experience to say, you know, the other thing about not, forgiveness and, not forgiving people is and I have gosh, I am guilty of this in my life, of having done this in my life. Um if I just let this person back in my life, if I forgive them and I let them this harmful person back in my life, they will be different. They'll be so grateful to be back in my life that they will change their behavior. Or I feel like this person needs to make amends, so I'm going to let them back into my life so they can make amends. Those things, if the person is not like stating an active intention to make amends and do things and be better and all of those things, like that's folly. That's again where our emotions are tricking us into, if I just relive this thing, it'll be better this time, right? Or things will be different. I'm very guilty of letting people back into my life who thinking that they would be different if that happened, or trying to repair things when people were not interested um in being less harmful. Now, this kind of brings up a good point. Like, we all y- normally, not on purpose, we all transgress against other people. We all, say things to other people that might be insensitive, or um make a mistake, or forget to include somebody, or all these things. And I say unintentionally because we're not, we're human. We make mistakes. We're not, most of us are good people, not out there trying to harm other people. And even the people who look like they're constantly trying to harm other people, not all of them are. Some of them are just dysfunctional humans in ways that we are not, right? So they don't know how to be with other people, or whatever. So we all transgress against other people. The big difference is that I would say probably most of the people on this call, like if we do something that, if we do something that harms somebody else and it's unintentional, we'll still try to make it, we'll apologize, we'll still try to make it right, that sort of thing. Some people just don't have enough self-reflection to do that, or there's some ego problem where I can't admit that I made a mistake, or um, if this person, they have some idea, if this person loved me, this wouldn't be a problem. All of these things. Or this person owes me something. Like that's a big one for me, like a sense of entitlement. Um, we we don't have entitlement. We're not entitled to practically anything with any other person. If we have an agreement, yes, but we don't get to determine other people's behavior just because it doesn't meet our expectations. We have a reasonable expectation for people not to do harm to us on purpose, but people can make mistakes. And the forgetting part, the do I let this person back in my life part, the redemption part on their part. So the other side of forgiveness might be redemption, but for redemption to take place, there has to be movement on the other side, right? So what I've seen very often is that I, I try to I have to think sometimes when I tell stories, because I try to remove any kind of identifying information. So I'm not giving away anything too personal about anybody. Um, so somebody I knew hadn't been in touch with her father for at least a couple of decades. It had been a really long time. And finally, like, she heard that he was sick, got in touch with him, and the first thing he asks is, "Do you forgive me? Do you forgive me? Do you forgive me? Do you forgive me?" It was about him. His redemption was about him. And so that became a problem, right? That became this problem that was, he's not actually, he just wants to feel better about himself. He just wants to feel better about his transgressions. He doesn't want to make it better for the person he transgressed against. He's just demanding over and over again, do you forgive me? Do you and she had done a lot of work to let go of the charge that she had around her father, but still, that's a hard thing when it's a parent, and the problems were many. um and they were incommunicado when he passed away. He died alone, basically. Unfortunately, it's very kind of sad. And but didn't get it. Like, if you want redemption, redemption is not about, it is about forgiveness, but it's about helping the person forgive you by making amends, by understanding that you've hurt them, incidentally or not, right? um so clearing the energetic body somehow. so there are there are a lot of shamanic ceremonies to that work at the level of the energy body and the soul body. So sometimes the energy body does heal itself. It does repair itself like the physical body does. But sometimes it needs a little bit of help, like the physical body does, right? So if I get an infection, I might take some antibiotics or whatever my doctor's prescribed. and clear that up, right? So that there's a little bit of help there. There's a little bit of, something going on. Um, but in infection, some infections, most infections will go away on their own. The body will just heal them. Um, but there might be some additional suffering that happens or there's something's really risky or whatever. So the energy body and the soul body are kind of the same way. Sometimes they need a little bit of help. Now I have worked on and worked with and been worked on by other shamanic practitioners. So we we all need to do our own work, but sometimes it's good to seek help. So for example, soul retrieval is not something I would do on myself. um, I've always sought the help of other practitioners for soul retrieval ceremony. And I know there are people out there that teach self soul retrieval and that sort of thing, but I just think it's too much of a challenge for a lot of reasons. So, do I recommend doing cleanup on the energy body? Absolutely, on a regular basis. Um, it doesn't matter how much healing you've done. We're still operating in a world where there are things that can happen to our energy body. And, we work on our energy body to make it more resilient and more healthy. Gosh, I don't have it with me. There's a book by the author Robert Bruce called Energy Work. It's not a shamanic book. Um, Highly, highly, highly recommend it for energy body work specifically. It's just the whole book is chock full of energy body exercises and ways to work with the energy body that you will feel immediately. Really, really, like this guy really like figured out his own way of teaching energy body work. So, um, oh, my ceremony episode. So yeah, I did one not that long ago on rituals and ceremonies and sort of ritual design and stuff like that. Um so yeah, I do. So that is another so um shamanically when I'm working with clients and they have there are a number of ways that attachments show up in the energy body. Just speaking about other people, sometimes they show up as cords. You might have heard of energy cords, or in Hawaiian they're called aka cords, and they're these we get corded to other people that we come into contact with, and some of those cords are fine, right? So I want my children, for example, to be able to draw energy from me and to be able to you know uh, filter hopefully through me the ancestral stuff that is good, and I'll try to filter out the ancestral stuff that's not good. So those cords are good. My partner and I have chords because we're intimate, and that sort of thing. And as long as those chords remain healthy, they're healthy. But we have chords of attachment to people that are not so healthy, and those should be removed. You can do it yourself. That's something you can do yourself, or you can have. You can go to somebody who's experienced in cord removal, particularly a shamanic healer, and have that work done. It's a pretty common thing that I do with clients. I usually find past life connections and all kinds of stuff there. The other thing we can do is, speaking specifically about the energy body and where these feelings tend to be held. I would say, generally speaking, the energy centers that are from the throat center down, a lot of stuff like emotional baggage, a lot of emotional baggage held in the heart, the sacral center, which is just above the genitals. You also have a navel center, but that's kind of its own thing. That's actually more internal. Um, but the sacral center, just above the genitals, any sort of sexual transgressive stuff it doesn't just have to be abuse, but definitely abuse and that sort of thing can be stored in that area. There can be a lot of shame held there, right? That sort of thing. And in the root chakra, which is or the energy center, which is at the perineum, or some people say perineum, however you want to pronounce it. But the flat skin between the anus and genitals, basically, that's where the root chakra is, and it's tied into the tailbone, the end of the spine, energy centers in the hips. We can hold on to a lot of shame energy there. We can hold on to a lot of um, uh, you know, energy that is from other people. We can get intrusions, which is like other people's energy stuck in us. Ugh, it's gross. It's like walking in the house with mud on your shoes. So working in this area and having some work done in this area is really important. There's a lot of shame complex held in this area, in the lower, particularly in the lower area, particularly in the sacral area, and it's the area that is responsible not just for our sexuality but our creativity, for all kinds of stuff can get hampered in that area. Yeah, yes, yes. Chord connections can actually cross I don't know the dynamics of it 100%, but chord connections can happen even across lifetimes. You can be courted to somebody after you've both passed away. So yes, we can be courted to somebody in the afterlife, and so having that chord, and the way, a lot of people call it cord cutting. I might refer to it that way. I like cord removal better. Cutting seems so violent. And what I do when I do this work with helping spirits is that um, basically we say, your energy is your energy, and this other person's energy is their energy. We want you to stand in your own energy. This is, spiritual sovereignty. Um, Yeah, they do. They can go certainly go they're sit out they really do sit outside of time and space, right? It's why we can maintain chords with with people who are no longer in our lives, who are living, and still have them with from relationships in the way past, to people who are deceased, to people that we knew in past lifetimes. So again, it's a good idea. Like if you want to really just one goal, I guess, of shamanism, if you study shamanism, is to be able to stand in your own power. We work with helping spirits, but we're not 100% dependent upon them, and their goal is to help us move into our own power, our own spiritual power. um so chords happen with anybody that we have contact with, basically, right? They you know so even people we have casual contact with, we create these tiny little filaments of connection between people. But the people we spend time with, right, it's like lifting, it's like lifting weights. The more you do that, the thicker the muscle becomes, right? The muscle grows. So the chords that we have with people that we have a strong emotional connection, or that we spend a lot of time with. So very literally, when we're in our mother's womb, we're corded to her, like physically corded to her through the umbilical cord. um that cord, not the umbilical cord, but we are corded to our parents or our caregivers from a very early age. And romantic relationships create really strong cords. Sexual relationships, in particular, create really strong cords. Uh, there's a reason why sometimes people can become obsessed with people they've had intimate relationships with, right? We can't stop thinking about them because there's still this cord. There's still thought energy traveling back and forth between this person. on an unconscious level. Like they form unconsciously. Although, there are ways that certain people with certain abilities, certain shamanic abilities can purposefully connect chords to people. People who have sort of energy vampire type personalities can get corded to somebody and um try to steal energy from them or whatever. But very easy to remove these cords. But they form just naturally. They're a part of sort of etheric reality. But yeah, they cross time and space. So to me they look like these little silvery threads coming off of a person. And so I've had clients, again, I try to sanitize to protect, not try, I sanitize to protect everybody's privacy. So, an example of the effect of a cord on somebody. So, had a client and I saw a cord connected to some part of the back of her neck, and it was like I could tell that whoever was on the other side of it was pulling things, like trying to pull energy out of there, and it was causing tension. And so I asked her, I said, "Do you have problems with, your neck in this area, particularly on the left side?" And she goes, "Oh my gosh, I've had neck pain for who knows how long, right?" And they, they, so I worked on this person, had helping spirits remove the cord, send the energy back, whatever. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have neck pain right now for the longest time." So that was a very physical effect. And I've seen that when something is hooked into the energy body like that, it can cause physical problems, but certainly can cause loss of energy or too much energy, which can result in things like, being manic or being anxious, and um, certainly can create intrusive thoughts. So if you ever have thoughts like, "That doesn't feel like me, am I possessed?" Maybe not. Maybe it's just a chord that you have with somebody. But they can definitely attach in to our pain body, and to the what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, which contains a lot of shame and that sort of thing. Um, are soul contracts the same as chords? Um, oh, thank you. Yes, no problem. Are soul contracts the same as chords? Not exactly. No. So soul contracts, the way that I understand them, are agreements that we make in past lives, essentially, that have an effect over time. Now, if we have a contract with someone, if we have an agreement with somebody that crosses time and space, whatever, like we are also going to be courted to that person, right? Um, because if we've created a strong enough relationship where we've created this contract with somebody, and soul contracts can be with ourselves too, right? So if we wonder, why did I incarnate in this reality, into this family? Why was I born into this family? And why was I born with this, physical problems? And why was I born with, this set of circumstances? Or why did I have to go through this set of circumstances? Sometimes we agreed to do that, either in a previous life, or at some point before we incarnated, we agreed to go through all of this stuff. And you might wonder, why the hell would I do that? Why the hell would I agree to go through the things that I've gone through? And the reason is so that you can heal from them, and that is part of your individual soul's healing and learning process. And the idea is that you're supposed to learn from this so you don't have to come back and experience this crap again, right? You, you're supposed to take that learning, that healing with you, and not have to go through it again. But if you haven't completely healed, like if you didn't heal from it in this life, I don't want to go too far down the karma path. If we didn't do the work we're supposed to do in this life, we may, when we die and go on, say, okay, I didn't do the work I wanted to get done, or I pledged to get done, or I made a contract to get done in that life. So I'm going to reincarnate and go through this all over again, or go through at least part of it all over again. So we'll see recurring themes on a sort of a microcosmic level. You see people in a single lifetime getting into the same kind of unhealthy relationships over and over again, right? Repeating unhealthy relationship patterns, because the point is they're supposed to learn from them, but if they don't learn from them, they repeat the pattern over and over again, right? um I think, not sure if my cat might be coming to say hi. She's up on the table here. Go say hi, Phoebe. Come on. No, she's like, I'm gonna be camera shy. I'm gonna walk in front of the camera, but at my own time and when you least expect it. What you doing? What you doing? She's very cute. And so is my puppy. I'm glad we got her back. Off topic. Um, my dog ran off last weekend. She's only a puppy. She's like 9 months old. Ran off, jumped out of the car when I was going to the grocery store and ran into the woods. Couldn't find her. Everybody was helping us. We were getting phone calls from people. I saw her, all this stuff. And she was gone for about 2 days, and she was freaked out, running away from people every time they tried to approach her. So, which is common with dogs. They will do that if they're lost sometimes. Their amygdala is turned on. And so finally, this is I looked at where people had seen her, and I did some journeying and said, ask my helping spirits to help out. And somebody had given us the idea, well, you should try one of these have a heart traps, like these big. I bought a big coyote trap that doesn't harm the animal. It's like a cage, and they come in to get food, and they trip the thing, and it just closes the door, and so she's like trapped inside. And I was worried because it's starting to become winter here. It's getting colder at night. We had gotten a little bit of snow, um, and she's from Puerto Rico, and she'd been out with for a couple of nights. So I got a location where I should put this thing. I set it up. I put her blanket in it so it have her smell, but also she could keep warm until we found her. Covered it so it would be covered from the elements, and set it up. And then I went back home, and I asked my helping spirits, please guide her towards this coyote trap and have her go in and eat the food in there, so I know she's fed, and also so we can bring her home. And I drove over to where I had set up this trap, and I got out. And the second I showed up, I see her she's got these little fox ears, pointy fox ears. See her ears spring up. And I can't even tell you how happy my heart was, like how just so happy to have her home. So I went and got her out of the cage and brought her in the car and brought her home. And um, just really, really happy to be her back, but to have her back. Um, but it was a really beautiful thing how many people had helped us. And a man and his daughter, I think she's about 13 or so, had been out in the woods trying to help rescue her. Just some random person that lived in the area. And when they found out she was home safe, his daughter bought her some peanut butter dog biscuits, and they brought them over. And they got to, because our dog's very fast. They could never catch her, so she got to meet her up close and give her a peanut butter dog biscuit. And we're gonna make up some baskets or something to thank the people that helped us out with the to find her and bring her home safe. But it gave me a really great, just a really wonderful feeling about the people that live in the area, that they would go out of their way to help us and be calling us and texting us and sending us. Somebody saw her and sent a picture of her, and we're like, that's her. um, and allowed us to do that. But also, may helping spirits, grateful for them to them for looking out for her and rescuing her. So we're at the end of the hour. We've been talking about forgiveness, talked about, if you weren't on at the beginning, talked about what forgiveness is from a spiritual perspective, talked about why it's important, gave a couple of ideas to how to start to work with forgiveness. um, it all starts with a decision that I want to feel better, right? That I am, you are important enough to give forgiveness a whirl, right? You are important enough not to have to feel this emotional baggage, this emotional charge with people that have harmed you or transgressed against you at some point in the past. And I gave some ideas about how to start that process. So if you missed that, you can go back on the recording is usually up within an hour or a few couple hours anyway. And oh, you're so welcome. Um, yeah, isn't it great? Like, animals are amazing. Animals are wonderful, and like I love all animals, but pets like dogs and cats, and I've done some work with horses. Uh, dogs and cats really bring people together. I find, you know, um, yeah, people really rallied around our little puppy, and it was just a beautiful thing, just a lovely thing. Really, really made me feel good about the area that I live in. Not that, I mean, other areas aren't, I don't think are any different. Lots of people would be helpful anywhere. People love dogs, and you can see why. Um, they're just amazing. Um, oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you enjoy the lives. If you're on here and you don't already, you can subscribe, and you'll be, if you hit there's like a bell icon or something if you're on YouTube, and it will inform you when I go live. If you don't see some kind of announcement about when that's going to be. Also, I do these are also announced on my Facebook page, so you can follow my website to my Facebook page and like that if you want to, and you'll see these are scheduled. I don't schedule them that far in advance because I kind of do them when I'm like, okay, I've got an opening tomorrow, where I'm not busy, and I'll do something. I'm also open to topics if people have topics they'd like me to suggest. This was a suggested topic. The last one was a suggested topic. So I'm happy um, to talk more about that. And I will revisit themes as well. So I'll go back and talk about other things that I've talked about, but obviously more and different information, different conversations with people. Thank everybody for joining me this morning. Hope you're enjoying the beverage of your choice. I'm having some Nantucket. I think this is Nantucket Blend from Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, a New England coffee company. Um, about the underworld. The underworld or the lower world, which are kind of two different things. But I can definitely talk about that next time. I can talk about shamanic worlds next time, maybe. So I'll put that in my book of ideas, which is actually it's not a book, it's an online notebook. Oh, both actually. Okay, yeah. Um, yeah, so we can do that. We can definitely do that. So next time we'll talk about shamanic worlds. The other thing I will add before I sign off is that so Facebook, because I have enough subscribers and content and views and things, I don't know what they're not Facebook, YouTube. YouTube has allowed me to start having what they call memberships, which I'm not suggesting you sign up for a membership with me yet because there's nothing special there yet. But I am going to be creating some content specifically for people who get members. So So that's a paid thing, and there are different tiers. It's like Patreon, but all happens within YouTube. I think it's a relatively new thing with YouTube, but so like my partner does, she does watercolor painting. So there's a guy whose videos she watches all the time. Who's a watercolor painter, and he has a membership now on YouTube and offers like a lot of tutorials and stuff. So I will be doing some members only videos, which will be um, much less like this and more practical lessons in spirituality. I won't exactly teach shamanism that way. I do think you need a live interaction with a teacher to be able to do that. But I will be teaching a lot of things that way and have a lot more practical stuff. So I might do like actual guided meditations on forgiveness and actual guided meditations on clearing the energy body and stuff like that. So definitely look out for that stuff. There will be I think there I think the way that it's set up is that there will be three tiers. Um, one of which will be super, super affordable, going through. So I'll make announcements here, there, and everywhere when I'm ready to do that. But I don't want anybody to pay for anything when there's no like content there yet or anything like that. But it's coming up. And if there's anything you'd like to learn in a membership type setting, um, then let me know. And thank my partner, Andrea, because she was like, because she signed up for this painter's membership on his YouTube and is getting like all of these tutorial videos, and it was like, you need to do this. I was like, okay, well, I'll look at it. YouTube has allowed me to do that. So there'll be some announcements, and there will be some really special stuff. I'll do some lives and things that are members only, which will be more like, we'll do some exercises together. We'll do some meditations, and I'll be putting out a bunch of guided meditations and spiritual exercises and things like that, and some in-depth stuff about stuff. Um, Anyway, thank you all for joining me. I've gone about 10 minutes over, not really unusual for me to go over time. I love talking with you all. I love you all. Take care and stay tuned for more stuff.